Trigger warning. This episode contains instances of sexual assault, violence, and touches on deep topics involving mental health and mental health disorders. Listener discretion is advised.
What is up, and welcome back to another episode of So There's That. I am your hostess doing the absolute mostest, like literally every single time, Kivanshi. And welcome back to another episode. Burr, 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 burr. I'm giving so much energy at the beginning of this because episode 4 of Reasonable Doubt is just sad. And yeah, we're gonna be sad, guys. We're gonna be sad. But the best part is it's not my moon cycle, so I think I can make it through this without crying. We will see, because when I was watching the episode, I just, like, my chest hurt really bad. A deep rooted and seated ache. So I will just say, if you're somebody, and I know I already gave like a trigger warning and everything, if you're somebody who is very sensitive to abuse, and this is abuse in any form, proceed with caution or don't listen to this at all, because it's just very traumatic. It's very traumatic. So before getting into the episode, again, if you like what I'm doing, go ahead and like it, share, follow, hit the notification bell if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you can go ahead and like, share, follow the pages. You can leave an actual written review on Apple Podcasts, and you can rate it like 1 to 5 stars. I think on Spotify you could just rate it, but I don't think you can like say anything, but you can participate in the polls. I always leave those on for people to send me like little notes, little messages, stuff like that. You can also follow me on Twitter at Kivanshi, and you can follow my Instagram page for my podcast at So There's That Podcast. So now that we have that out of the way, we're just gonna dive right into Reasonable Doubt Season 2, Episode 4. It's titled Primetime. The genre is drama, which I like to say every time. And I like to mention the cast and crew who's like most prevalent, or what I feel stands out to me in the show. So like, I don't know if you've noticed, like some of my podcast episodes, I'll mention like the cinematographer, the editor, and stuff like that, because depending on what I see visually and what I feel really helps propel the story, I'll mention it. With that being said, this episode was written by Dallas Rico. The director is Julie Dash, and the cast: Emayatzi Corinealdi as Jax, McKinley Freeman as Lewis, Tim Joe as Daniel, Shannon Kane as Shanelle, Morris Chestnut as Corey, Kaye Singleton, who's Tanya, and we were introduced to her very briefly during Morris Chestnut's transcendent appearance in Season 2, Episode 1. So that was really nice. And Thaddeus Mixson, who is Spenser, who is one of the kids. So we have 2 new players in this episode where we kind of like get a little bit more screen time. So I hope, in my mind, because of how I'm reviewing the show, I don't take notes for real on it. I'm just sitting here in front of you guys with like my feelings and my memory. So I'm hoping that keeping their names up is gonna like trigger me to talk about like their storyline. So where are we? Last episode we saw that Shanelle ran off with Adrian, who worked with JT, and we find out that they have been having an affair. But we also found out like this $30 million that allegedly Shanelle like took out of like JT's foundation or from him and put it in some offshore account that she doesn't know about. And they're trying to run away, but they end up getting caught, and Jax is able to convince Shanelle to like turn herself in, and that her and Corey are going to do everything in their power to get her out, and more so tell the truth of like what's happening. Like, yeah, there's some things that look kind of bad, look kind of shaky, and they're not adding up, but please let us do our jobs so that we can get you back home. And we also find that Corey has a more like a primary motivation with this person named Isabella that we don't really know about, but we know that potentially she is in jail for self-defense against an abusive husband on her side. So all of these themes are like tying together in why everybody, at least specifically Jax and Corey, are pushing for Shanelle. So we find ourselves trying to figure out like Adrian's connection to Shanelle, to the money, what is actually going on. And in the foreground of trying to figure that out throughout this entire episode, we get to see the flashbacks and the how of Shanelle and JT. I will say, why did y'all choose this time to play? I don't know. Stop it. I will say that this episode, the season is setting the tone for like sadness. It's important though. It's really important. I like how they are addressing battered woman syndrome, abuse, every type of abuse. And we'll talk about some abuse that people don't even know is abuse later on in this review. But I feel really sad overall because I feel like almost everyone on set has probably experienced some form of abuse, has seen a friend or family member get abused, or may have found themselves, based on what was written, realizing that they may have contributed to the abuse and trauma of someone. There's so much reverence and respect to victims in this episode, like in all of the episodes, but in this episode specifically, especially because we're going back to like the origin of JT and Shanelle's relationship. There was just so much care given to the memory of it all. The romanticizing of when your abuser used to be good to you. And it's done in a way that I don't really think I've seen outside of like Law and Order SVU. Typically in drama shows that aren't centered on sex crimes, it's very, they try to paint it in a very black and white type situation. And oftentimes it's met with, well, why didn't you leave? Well, you should have did something. Oh, well, you could have did something a long time ago. Oh, you should have said something. And then we like move on. But we never really explore, especially visually, what it looked like to break down someone to the point where they felt they had nowhere to go, to the point where they felt they could not leave at all. Abuse is not something that happens overnight. It's sometimes your abuse happens in the most beautiful of ways. Being gifted a house, being gifted a car, being flown out to the country that you wanted to see the most, in ways that are slowly making you indebted to someone for every little thing that they're taking away from you that you're not even noticing. And you're not noticing it because they're overshadowing what they're removing from you and your humanity with these grand gestures. And so I really love that this episode took the time to go back in time with Shanelle and JT to show us something beautiful, right? But one of my favorite themes from one of my favorite shows out now, Interview with a Vampire, is the phrase where Louis says memory is a monster. And that theme is present in this episode because we start off where Shanelle is remembering the times where they were good and he was sweet and it was beautiful, how he proposed, and how nervous he was, and seeing it through the lens of that battered woman syndrome and still feeling his presence and still feeling this fear, right? And so we have all of this circling in the foreground. It's very much heavily centered on Shanelle. But then Corey wants to do like a primetime interview from jail where Tanya, he gets her to be the interviewer. And Jax is a little worried because she's like, I don't want her to be blindsided. I don't want her to send her back into like a space mentally where she has a breakdown on TV. So at first, things are kind of going like so-so. And Tanya is asking questions in a way that says that she doesn't get it. She's probably never been hit, and probably doesn't think or believe that she's been abused in any way. So the way that she's asking the questions lack empathy, lack sympathy, and lack humanity. So at one point, Shanelle stops the interview and Jax goes and speaks to her and she's like, you know, why didn't I leave? Like, it didn't have to be this way. Hold, please. Stop it. Go get a kennel. Kennel. I'm working. And Jax reminds her, like, I'm on meds over being with somebody who was emotionally abusive and manipulative for a couple of months. And they tried to kill me too. And you've been enduring for so long. And I hate that you had to endure, but what you did and what you were able to do for yourself and finally stand up for yourself shows the strength that you have. And it is not your burden to carry the guilt of their abuse. So whether you want to go back out there and talk to her or not, you are not wrong for wanting to let go of the responsibility of advocating for the person who was beating you for years. And so we go back out and Tanya asked, you know, like, what was different, you know, and still kind of going along the lines of like, you could have left anytime, you could have left anytime. And Shanelle's like, so you've never stayed in a relationship or a situation or a job where you knew you overstayed your welcome, but you were there anyway? You have no idea why you're not leaving. You have no idea what's making you hold on to the situation, and yet you're not gone. And so she's kind of like taken aback a little bit, because now you have to reflect on your own relationships. I have friends who they'll be telling me something like a past relationship or a current relationship, and I'm just like, wow, like, this is a form of abuse. And they're like, oh, well, they never hit me, they never talked down to me. Like, the things that people recognize are physical abuse, verbal abuse. But there's an intricacy in emotional abuse, emotional manipulation, social abuse, intellectual abuse, financial abuse, because the way that they are presented in a relationship feels as if you're gaining something from that partner. But for every gain, there is a loss. For every I will take care of you and you will not have to want for anything is a loss of your own value, so that when you try to leave, you have nowhere to go. You have no finances. You're out buying rings and bags and all this other stuff and you flaunting for the gram. But then the moment that person is upset with you, they cut you off, or they're now putting you on an allowance, or they're telling you where you can and cannot go. They're telling you which social circles you can and cannot participate in. They're telling you how to think, when to speak. And I remember being at work, and me and another coworker were like, hey, we're gonna go get something to eat. Do you want something? And he was like, no, my wife will kill me if I eat dinner without her. And I was like, wait, what? I was like, I was like, oh, is it like, now I have to rephrase this question because I'm confused. I need to understand. I'm like, oh, do y'all have like this tradition of like, you know, eating together every night? Like, you know, it's just a sandwich. And he was just like, no, like she'll get really mad. So I'm gonna just wait until she gets here with some food and then we'll just eat together. And I was just like, what? And I remember talking to my coworker about it, and I'm just like, you know, being someone who was in an emotionally manipulative and abusive situation before, it's like you don't even recognize how much you have to give of yourself and sacrifice to make space for your abuser to be comfortable, to the point where you're approaching certain things like eating with a fear of retaliation or a fear of retribution. And in this interview, just even with that question from Shanelle to Tanya, the wheels are turning. Wheels are turning. Because how are you participating in your own debasement to make someone else, to assist that person in treating you terribly? What are you giving up in your own dignity, in your own self-esteem, to feel needed and wanted and valued by this other person? And to what expense? To what degree? And so we have these two women on these opposite sides of things, and the only difference between the one and the other is Shanelle got tired and she no longer cared about putting his image and his dignity over her own. She says, why am I sitting here trying to protect him when it was him or me? My face was getting thrown through the wall. He's punching me and then begging me to make him feel comfortable because he feels bad about abusing me. And he's going to keep doing it over and over and over and over again. And so you see this shift where Tanya finally gets it and finally connects. So at the end of the interview, she's talking to Corey, and she was like, you know something? I learned a lot from Shanelle today, and I've been in this situationship with you for far too long. And Corey was like, well, I'm not like JT. And she was like, no, you may not be exactly like him. You're not hitting me. You're not doing anything like that. But you're putting me in a situation to where I am no longer recognizing myself, and I am here, and you're not even creating a welcoming space for me, and yet here I am still crawling and devaluing myself behind you. So I'm actually really glad that I had this interview, and hope to see you never again. Goodbye. And Jax is like, so how long y'all been, you know, bumping uglies? Because the fuck? Like, what are we doing, bro? What are we doing? You got a by name request interview with somebody who you're sleeping with, and she came into this interview with my friend with that energy behind you. This could have gone south. But it appears that there's a win in the situation. So we're back at home, and, you know, we're dealing with Lewis as well, because Spenser wants to be in Hamilton. And earlier in the episode, when he brought it up to Lewis, you know, oh, like, oh, it's just gonna be tights and wigs, da-da-da, like, you've been working for basketball for forever, like, I don't want you to just throw it away. Well, Spenser got into a little tussle at school, and it's unlike him. Like, Spenser knows how to use his words, and so they're trying to figure out, like, why are you fighting? And Spenser finally tells him, like, it really wasn't even about the boy, it was about you. I finally feel comfortable enough to say that I want to be able to do basketball and act, because this is something that I'm passionate about, and the first thing you do is clown me. And so then when I go to school and somebody else is clowning me, I'm more upset that I didn't, like, lash out at you in whatever way, shape, or form. So he takes accountability and responsibility, but he tells his dad, like, I'm supposed to get support from you. I built up the courage to talk to you as a father to his son, and the first thing you did was make fun of me. So how am I supposed to be out in the world, and how am I supposed to accept this within myself when the place where I'm supposed to feel the safest is now unsafe? Where's the psychological and emotional safety for you to create in this household for me to pour into me on all those things? And to Lewis's praise, he apologized. And he apologized without an excuse. And I love that we're getting more and more shows that show black families apologizing to each other and not being like, well, I was in a bad way. Like, it's not your child's job to try to figure out where you were mentally and emotionally when you trauma dumped on them. You need to apologize to them, and then you need to go talk to your spouse or talk to your parents or talk to your friends on how you're going to work through this so that you do not do that same thing again. Because now, a relationship that was very close, there's a fracture here. And yes, Lewis apologized. And yes, Spenser told him how he felt, and I love that. It doesn't change that Spenser, part of this relationship is broken. But Lewis talks about it with Jax, and, you know, she's like, look, our family did the best they could, and they still dumped on us. It's our job to recognize the dump and sort the crap from what they did so that we don't push that crap onto our kids. And all we can do is just have less and less shit to dump on our kids. Not that we're not going to create new traumas or that they're not going to be traumatized by something that we do or a mistake that we make as parents. But as long as we're working to not do what our parents did, then that's all that we can do to show up for them. And I really love that. While I didn't get the coupling between Jax and Lewis that I want, like, what are we waiting on? I really, like, they need, okay, maybe it's just my, like, raunchy thoughts. Jax and Lewis are showing up emotionally and communicating in ways that they really lacked in season 1. So I love that they are creating a space in which they are listening, and everything that they say to each other is for the benefit of staying together, for the benefit of their relationship, partnership, and friendship. So there's a lot less arguing in their relationship. Even when she can't speak to him for long, she's being truthful and honest in that space, and he's receiving that, yes, she does have to leave, but thank you for sharing that with me. And what I really loved in the last episode is that they openly said, I'm not in this case. We are in this case. So Lewis, instead of taking the role of like, dang, you're always working and I'm on the outside, he put himself with her. And so now she has a partner, even though he's not a lawyer, but she has a partner with her. So he's allowing himself to understand more and be into her feelings about some of these cases more, instead of feeling that she's choosing the law over him. And she's created this space for him to be like a partner, or like a little assistant, an emotional assistant. And so I just love how they're more engaged with one another, and she's more engaged with his tech stuff that he has going on. And it's like they're now CEOs of their lives, and they're running it very well and very efficiently. But I am waiting on the payoff. What episode is it going to be? I'm looking forward to that, because I love their chemistry. It's just so beautiful to see a relationship that struggled, but two people chose each other. And even in this episode with Shanelle and with Spenser and Jax and Lewis and Daniel and Adrian, everything like that, it really is about choice. It's about choosing you. It's about protecting you. It's about realizing like what's the most important things in your lives and the choices that you make in life and the fallout and the consequences of those things in the first place. So I just really love like this undercurrent of everything that's happening is always on display every time anybody is on screen. The actors are doing their job. I am just loving it. Like, the writers are providing just beautiful context and beautiful content and beautiful storylines, and the actors are really taking it, and they're taking the direction, and they're listening to the director. They're asking those important questions, and then they're delivering the scenes to make you feel for every character. There's not a single character that I'm not rooting for at all. Like, every character that I see, there's something in me that's like, why? I want to know why, and I want to know, and I want to know more. And that speaks to the level of respect that's in the writer's room. Every character, even your antagonist, they're still a human, and we all like fuck up and we all make mistakes. And so there's a level of respect in the pen from every writer. And I think that this episode is like the highlight of what that looks like, because we are now tackling head on the abuse. And we have these memories. Well, were the memories really good memories, or did I trick myself into making the better of the bad times be the good times? We like, what actually happened? You know, you go through a traumatic experience and a traumatic event. You don't know the exact time. You don't know what you did. You don't know what they said. You don't know what it was. There's just this feeling of fight or flight. And throughout the entire episode, you're just watching the memories change and shape and take form. And now you as the viewer are like, what is really going on? So there's that. Reasonable Doubt season 2, episode 4, Primetime. Whew, I hope I could keep it as light as I could. It's tough. I watched the episode twice. It's just so good. Shannon, Kane, breakout star of the season. We're not even halfway done, but so much, like, this woman is talented. She is talented, and her and Jax on screen, you can just tell that they love each other in real life. Like, these actresses love each other. It's so good. It's so pure. And with what they have to actually act out on screen, I can only imagine their process of getting out of those heavy feelings. And I can only imagine the process of getting in to those heavy feelings and having to create that space in that bubble with one another that's only theirs when they share the screen together. It's really deep, and what actors do to deliver pain to us, what they do to deliver trauma to us, in order for all of us, wherever we are in life, to work through it together through the writing and the acting. It's a lot. It takes a lot out of the actor, but they purposely do it because they love it, and these are the things that need to be told. And of course, for any like deep episodes, like if you are struggling with abuse of any kind, please dial the hotline number. Please pick up a phone. People, check on your friends. Don't wait for somebody to tell you that something is going on. Be present and actively present. Sometimes that just means shutting up and listening and allowing them to just speak, because eventually the truth will come out. And just showing up in ways that that person needs, and not in a way that you think that you should be showing up for them. And on that note, I am going to sign off, and I will see y'all in the next episode.